questions for you guys. Also, if you want to win some free stuff, we have our TIG 200 gas lens kit here, which we're going to show you in a few seconds. We're going to be giving 2 of those away. So what I want to see what you guys are welding at home. So post a photo of what you're working on in the comments, and I'm going to go through and pick my 2 favorites at the end. It could be anything from a house project to a hot rod to a piece of art. Be creative, and I'm going to do my best to look through them and pick my favorite. So let's get started. So what I'm using today is the Eastwood TIG 200 AC/DC machine. This is kind of our workhorse machine. It is 200 amps, as the model name sounds like. It works on 110 or 220 volt. You can switch this over between the 2 of them, and it recognizes it internally. Today I'm going to be mainly just showing you guys basics on technique, so we're going to do just steel. This machine does do aluminum, but today we're going to be on the DC side doing just steel. So now we showed you the machine here. I'll go over and show you guys how I have my torch set up and some of that stuff that could be helpful for you. So this is our standard torch that comes with the TIG 200. It is I'll put it down here so you can see. It's our WP17 torch. It's a nice mid-range torch that is good up to anywhere from 150 to 170 amps continuous use, but it can handle up to 200 amps for short bursts. Now the thing that's a little different here than what you may see on a standard torch, if you got just our normal machine, is the gas lens setup. So this gas lens setup here, we offer a little kit to convert your torch over with the parts for both 1/16 and 3/32 size. Why is the gas lens so great? Well, it gives you better gas distribution over the piece, and I'm going to show you guys the difference between it. Now we also, if you guys don't want to try your luck at winning one, or you don't have a great project you think that I'm going to like, on the home page we got these on a daily deal special. So go to eastwood.com. Right there on the home page, you can click on it. You can get yourself a kit so you can upgrade your torch and get yourself land some real nice welds. So here's the difference. The main big difference is, let me unthread this here. This is what I would call a standard setup. This is right here the gas lens. You can see that there's a mesh, like a stainless screen around it in the collet body. That's where our gas is coming out. So what that does is that puts a nice little puff of gas out that's going to, or a cloud of gas that's going to cover your work area pretty nicely. The standard one that's been around since the beginning of time, for as far as TIG welding goes pretty much, is this style. This collet body has a couple little holes drilled, which you may see here. What that does is when the gas comes out, it threads over here and it's actually hidden in the cup. When that comes out, it's going to hit the walls of the gas cup, and it's going to bounce around and eventually come out. What happens there is it gets a little turbulent, and it can also be not as efficient, so you're going to have to turn your gas up. So with the gas lens, you can ideally use less gas, and you get a better coverage of gas so that you can actually stick your electrode or your tungsten out further and get in some tight areas. So that's the difference in them. The gas cup obviously is quite a bit larger. So when we thread this in here, you can see the difference in the area or the diameter in that of what's going to be coming out with gas. This is handy for any type of welding. It doesn't matter if you're just doing mild steel or you're doing titanium. This is a pretty necessary item once you get yourself comfortable with welding with a TIG. These things are pretty much will last a lifetime. They're not consumable as long as you don't A, drop it and shatter the cup, or B, if you start welding something that's kind of dirty, your weld puddle may pop back on you and you'll get little tiny pebbles inside that stainless screen that'll stick on. They do not come off. If you try to pick them off, you're just going to rip the screen and you kind of ruined it. So what I usually do is I'll use them until I start seeing a couple little pebbles on there, and then I'll actually get a new one out there once I notice a decrease in my gas coverage. But if you weld nice clean metal and you don't drop it, these things could potentially last the lifetime of as long as you want. But usually I ended up killing them when I weld something that's I didn't clean quite as well. So speaking of cleaning, I got a couple pieces here that we're going to actually show you guys under the helmet welding. I'm going to talk about cleaning and setting my torch up first, and then we'll get into actually doing some welding, and we'll take a couple of your questions. So don't forget to ask any kind of questions you may have about TIG. I'll do my best to answer them and hopefully help you guys out. So cleaning the metal, how do I clean the metal? With TIG welding, the way I describe to everybody, because they always say, hey, I heard with TIG welding it's got to be pretty clean, and the answer is yes. What I say is, ideally, it needs to be surgically clean. The cleaner your metal is, the cleaner your weld's going to be. I know it's a pain in the butt to clean your metal and spend all that time, but it's really, really going to help your weld in the end, and it's going to give you better results overall. So what I have here is I have a couple pieces that I got ready. So this is just a standard piece of like 1/8 inch steel here. This is actually cold rolled. So when you have hot rolled steel, there'll be like a mill scale, which actually our welding table here has on it. If you can see, it has this gray, more of a dark gray tone to it. That's like the mill scale. It's pickled and oiled. That's a coating that keeps it from corroding. This is cold rolled, so it doesn't have that coating on it, but it still has an oil and a little bit of a film on it from the mill that keeps it from rusting. If we were using a MIG welder, sure, we could throw this down, lay a weld, it would burn it off, it really wouldn't be an issue. If I try and weld this just as is with the TIG, what it's going to do is it's going to burn up all those oils and contaminants and even the microscopic corrosion off of the surface, and you'll start seeing like a brown halo around your weld, or even black. If you start seeing that on your welding, then you know that you need to clean the metal a little better, or you have a gas issue. So what I do is I start by, and to save you guys watching me grind for ages, I've already prepped these ahead of time. So what I use is one of these little die grinders that we offer. A lot of you guys probably have them in your box. And I put one of these little 36 grit sanding discs on there, and I buzz over my part. If I'm doing sheet metal or something that's thin, I probably won't go this aggressive. I might use a DA sander or something, but for what we're doing today, I buzzed over it with this 36 grit. Got all the contaminants off, got it down to bare metal. So I'll put it here so you can see the difference in the two of them. So this part here is just about ready to weld. I prepped this up probably about an hour ago. One thing you want to keep in mind, and a mistake I see a lot of people make, is that they'll clean a part pretty good and say they start working on it, and then they leave for a couple days, and you come back to work on your project again and you start welding. Well, what you really need to do is clean the part before you start TIG welding again. Even if it doesn't really look like there's any visible surface rust, there could be corrosion that's started on the piece, or contaminants have gotten in the metal that may cause a dirty weld. So what I always like to do is I keep these little scuff pads, I'll call them, or Scotch-Brite pads. I like to keep those around. So, oh man, our iPad's talking to us. So we got our iPad over there for answering questions. Apparently I said something that it liked, and it started talking to me. Anyways, scuff pads. I like to keep these red or green scuff pads around, and I prep it with our pre-low VOC. This is like a paint prep, but it's also really good for using for cleaning panels before you weld. Now, the one thing I want to stress is do not use anything but straight acetone or our low VOC pre-painting prep. Either of those are acceptable to use. If you use our standard pre, or even like brake clean or something like that, what it does is it creates your own mustard gas. Nasty stuff. So if you spray brake clean or something like that on a part, wipe it all down and then go to weld, even though it may seem clean, it leaves a residue on the surface that when you weld, actually burns it off, creates a gas which goes under your helmet, and it's basically mustard gas. It's going to give you shortness of breath. You're going to get lightheaded. It's not a good feeling, especially when you're welding. It's not going to help your weld no matter what you do. So I take this pre like this, and our low VOC pre evaporates pretty quick. So what I do is I usually spray it on the actual Scotch-Brite pad. And I'll go over my area where I'm going to be welding with the Scotch-Brite just one final time here. And I'm trying to get it in there where we're going to be welding on that overlapped area. So the nice thing is this stuff evaporates really quick. So in a couple minutes where I'm talking, this is going to be fully evaporated and ready to weld. I'll do this one too while we're at it. So you can use the Scotch-Brite. Another thing that you can do, I use it a lot on aluminum, is you can take a wire brush, preferably a stainless wire brush, and you can go over the part and hit it with the wire brush. It'll take off any little bit of corrosion or imperfections in the metal, or not imperfections, any dirt or anything that's gotten in the metal. A tip, get yourself 2 stainless brushes, or 3 potentially. Why? You want to have a different stainless brush for every type of material you're using. I usually write on the side of it steel, aluminum, stainless, whatever. I'll write it right on the wire brush. So if you want to write aluminum on here, the reason you want to do that is because electrode is a E3 or a purple band electrode that we offer on our website here. They're probably one of my favorites, being that you can weld any material with them. Previous times you'd have to buy a separate electrode for aluminum, 3 or the purple band one. You can weld any type of material with it, which makes it nice. I don't have to keep them all separated, and all you really need is just your different diameters. So we're welding 1/8" steel today. I'm using a 1/16 because I want to keep a nice tight weld arc or puddle, and I'm going to try and keep my weld from eating away at the top edge of this. I want to show you guys a little bit of puddle control. So I'm using a smaller one with 1/16 filler rod. This is ER70S. It's pretty much the standard welding rod you'll use for mild steel. So the way I set this up, and I'll try and put this down here so you guys can see the detail. So when you guys are setting up your electrode or your tungsten here, a quick way for setup for anybody that's a beginner that is having trouble figuring out how long to leave this, there's a bunch of formulas out there you can use that, you multiply the thickness of the diameter of this, and you can get your settings on here. What I like to do to just get myself real quick when I was starting out, I push it in so that it's just past the area where it's ground, leave just a little bit past that. And that's a good starting point to get you where you need to be, or at least in the range. Now, if you're welding something, the metal that you're going to weld, you're going to be set it on there, get yourself close, and then from there you can at least lock your wrist in and get yourself at a nice height while you're welding. So we got our electrodes set up here. We have our pieces prepped for the most part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my gloves and my helmet all set up. We're going to have the camera guy walk around here behind me, and we have a special welding lens for the camera that he's going to flip over right before we're going to weld, so you guys can actually see what I see under the helmet, and I can hopefully give you guys some examples of things that you should or shouldn't be doing. So while he's wandering around here doing that, let me take a question or two on the iPad, see what you guys have to say. And I'm going to sit down on my handy chair here. So let's see. A handful of comments. I could see myself using the iPad. That's pretty cool. Let's see. Lots of people saying no sound. Hopefully everybody's got their sound figured out. If you tap on the video, it should give you some sound. That way, if you're in a quiet place and you don't want the sound right away. So we don't have any questions yet. Somebody said, I love you. That's very nice of them. You don't know me yet, though. Don't forget, I want to see pictures of what you guys are welding. If you got anything you're working on, whether it's a car, whether it's an art project, anything, post up a photo of it. I'm going to pick my favorites at the end. We're going to give away one of these TIG 200 or one of these gas lens kits that'll fit your TIG 200 or any torch that's similar size as the WP17. Now, another thing I'm using here, actually we'll show you that after we're done running a puddle here. Show you different pedals. So I got my pedals set at about 140, 160 amps max. You could set your pedal kind of wherever you like it, as long as it melts the metal correctly. So I like to set it so that my pedal, when it's in what I would call the sweet spot, is about just a little over halfway down. Why I like that is so I have a little bit extra, so I can goose the pedal a little bit to get a little more amperage if I need to, or I have plenty of room to back off if the part's starting to get too hot or I'm afraid I'm going to burn a hole in it. I have plenty of room to back off. If you have a machine that has a pulse setting, or you can ramp up the amperage, you can kind of set all that up ahead of time if you know what you're welding. But for mortals like us that don't have that set up, you can just simply pump your pedal. That's your pulse setting. So, got my helmet on here and my gloves. Got our piece set up and my torch. So we're doing a little lap joint here. I like to throw my, my torch lead either over my lap or over my shoulder. That's another thing I see beginners make the mistake of. If you have this whole entire hose just hanging off of your arm, it gets heavy real quick and it can make you move your arm how you don't want to. You want it to be pretty precise. So set this in just a little bit. Grab my filler rod. Let's set up here. All right, so another thing I like to do is just take a test run across, make sure your hand's steady. You can reach where you need to reach to get across the piece. We're just working on the table here, so it's pretty simple. I use my table, I always grind it smooth, and I like to use my table as a guide so I can slide my hand across it. Makes for somebody with shaky hands like myself, it makes a world of difference. So, all right, you guys ready to do a close-up shot here? So I'm going to try and move my head enough, a little out of position here so you guys can see what's happening. So when you strike your arc, you start seeing the metal get a little wet, is what I like to call it, where you can see the puddle. The more throttle I give it, now that I saw a puddle start, I can add filler rod. Add filler rod. So what you want to do is move about half the distance of your puddle and dip a little filler rod in. It'll tell you what it needs as you go. I'm moving kind of slow here just so you guys can see the process of, you can see it takes just a little bit off the end there. Just a little bit of filler rod. So you don't need to shove the filler rod in there where it needs to be. Oop. Having a little trouble seeing here because we got to make sure the camera can get in over my shoulder. Alright, and as you get to the end here, you want to back off a little bit and put one little dab, and then hold your torch there. So hold your torch, wait for the gas to come off, and that's when you know it's good. You don't want to pull your hand away really fast because that can basically shock the weld, or you pull the shielding gas away from the weld too quickly. So that's one so you guys can see the technique. I want to show you guys a couple common mistakes, but one big one I see people when they're just starting out making. So we're going to set this one up. Torch angle is really important. So the angle that you have your torch at, If everything was in a perfect world and you could weld straight up and down like this with your filler rod, that would be great. But the problem is you can't really see your weld. You can't get in there and you might touch your electrode or your tungsten tip. So what you want to do is turn back a few degrees so you can see the front of it. You only want to turn a few degrees. I'd say maybe 10, 15 degrees, something like that. If you start turning too much and get it like a 45, what you're doing is you're shooting the arc all the way across your piece. You're heating up way out ahead of your piece, and it's going to start melting your filler rod away. It's also going to start heating the part up. And if you're welding something that's thin, you're going to find you're going to start burning holes in it. It's going to start warping it. This is especially bad on aluminum. That's probably the biggest problem beginners with aluminum have that I've seen, is that they turn their hand too much, starts melting their filler rod off into little balls, and then they're fighting it the whole time. They got a mess to deal with. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to do a little bit of a weld. Get dust off there. I'm going to do a little bit of a weld, and then halfway through I'm going to turn my wrist real hard, and I'm going to show you guys what it looks like. Keep that in mind when you're welding in the future. If you see it starting to do that, keep it in the back of your head that you need to turn your torch angle up probably a little bit. All right, you good for doing another close-up here? All right, cool. All right, so I'm going to let the metal melt in. You see it? This is a normal torch angle. Now I'm going to turn my torch mid-weld. And you see what's happening there. It's melting everything around, but not what I want. We're heating all kinds of stuff up. So if you quickly turn my hand back around, I can get it back under control. And the only downside is now I put a lot of heat into the part. So it's welding a little differently than before. It's real fast. So if you start seeing that arc that far away, get that sucker back in there real close. My fingers are getting hot there. Whew. So that gets hot real quick when you start doing that, because you're transferring heat into a much broader area. It's going into my hands with the torch, it's going into the workpiece, and it's just making a mess here. So if we can get in closer here, Joe, I'll show you guys. You can kind of diagnose what's going on here. So if you look at the heat affected zone in here, when we started in the beginning, before I started turning my wrist, it's pretty small, and you can actually see a ramp up right here where the heat started to ramp up real high, went back down kind of normal, and then it ramped up again at the end. So this really shows you how much more heat you're putting into a part when your torch angle or your torch height isn't correct. So make sure you keep the torch angle, maybe like I said, 10-15 degrees turned, so that the back of the torch is turned away from how you're traveling. So I'm left-handed, so my torch is turned like this and I'm traveling to the right. If I was right-handed, I'd set my piece up straight up and down, turn it back about 10-15 degrees, and run like that. If you're at 45, that's no good. You're going to have problems doing that, and it's going to look just like that. It's going to get all messy. So if you look in here, you can see our the difference, especially in the heat affected zone of these two pieces here. So this is the one I did where I didn't turn my torch at all. You can see how it's pretty much the same the whole way across. I was moving at a little slower than normal so you guys could see, but I was moving at a fairly steady rate, so you don't see the heat rising up like this one where you can actually see it go up, back down, up like that. That's what you want. You want it to be a smooth weld with the heat the same all the way through the piece. Let me see if we have any comments, questions, anything like that, and then I'll show you guys what I'm using for a pedal here. So somebody asked about type of filler rod that they should be using for steel or sheet metal. ER70S is what we're using here. And for now, I'm going to turn the welder off so you guys can hear, and I'll answer that question there. ER70S is what we're using here. Pretty much the that have a different makeup that's going to make it flow a little better. But this is your kind of center of the road. It's what we offer. It works great. For sheet metal is what we were being asked there, is what the what type is preferred for sheet metal. They do sell the ER70S filler rod in smaller diameters. You can get like an 035 diameter. That's good for like 18 gauge, 20 gauge sheet metal. But the downside is that your welding supply store, it's kind of, you have to get it special ordered. The other thing is that they make you buy it in like 10 or 20 pound boxes, if my mind me. But if you're not doing a lot of sheet metal, you're just doing one little project, you may not want to buy that huge box. You do not want to use 1/16. You don't want to use 3/32 to try and weld sheet metal. The problem is that the filler rod that you're using is actually thicker than the parent metal, the sheet metal that you're welding. So your sheet metal that you're trying to glue together is going to melt and burn holes before the 1/16 rod is. And it's just going to cause a problem. You want to try and match, when it comes to thinner materials like that, match your filler rod as closely as you can in diameter to what you're welding. So what I like to do is get the 035 filler wire in bulk. But a little trick you can do is you can run MIG wire, your MIG welding wire, right off of your spool. Now, not flux core, your solid core MIG wire. If you get some 030 or 035 MIG wire, you can run it right off the spool, straighten it out, and you actually weld thin gauge steel with it with no problem. So that's what I like to use in a pinch. I've seen online that people have argued that MIG wire doesn't work or it's harder of a weld. But if you look right on your spool, more than likely your spool of MIG wire, of solid core MIG wire, is ER70. A lot of guys that they only use that because it's easier to store. But either way, doesn't matter. But make sure that you're matching your filler rod with the material you're welding when it comes to thin stuff. The other thing I want to show you guys is the pedal. So if you have an Eastwood TIG 200, pedal probably looks like this. This is what I affectionately call our sewing machine pedal that comes standard with the machine. It works just fine, and it has the same type of variable amperage as any other pedal. But the pedal, depending on what you're welding or how you're welding, sometimes can tend to walk away from you when you're pumping the pedal, which can be a little bit of a pain. It's not quite as comfortable because you're kind of on your toe a little bit more. So after a ton of requests from you, the customers, and also from me complaining to our product designers, we have a rocker style pedal now that we offer. Put a little head-to-head type deal here. So this is the difference in the two pedals in size, also style. So this one has a little area here where you can put your heel, and you can fit your heel in there, and it catches on the bottom. You're putting all your weight on the pedal, and you can rock the switch back and forth like that. Puts it a little more what I would call ergonomic position, as well as it's not going to tend to walk around like this other one would. So we just got these in literally like yesterday, I believe, and they're on the website now. You can order these for your TIG 200. They'll plug right up like stock, and you'll get a pedal that's a little more ergonomic and also won't walk all over the place for you. So that's the difference in those two things, the two pedals at least. The other cool thing that we just came out with, and I didn't get to use it too much today because we didn't have anything out of position, but we have our new flex head torch. Again, we've been having requests about the flex head torch, about getting one of those in. The great thing about that is, as it sounds, you can flex the head all over the place like this. So if you're welding out of position, say you're welding tubing or something that's round that you want to get around it, you can bend the head like this, and we can, obviously we're not going to be welding an aerosol bottle, but you can get around a piece if you have it bent like that. So these are really great because of the, you can bend it. It still has a finger switch on it, so you can do the fixed amperage welding like you can do with our standard torch. It also has this nice stick grip here, which is good for the heat transfer. So you're not going to feel the heat as much as you will with our standard WP17 torch. With the flex head, it's got this nice big grip on it, so you're not going to get that heat transfer that you would by holding it with the standard one. So this is pretty cool. Also, just literally came in like a day or two. I've barely even gotten to weld with this thing yet, but so far it's been kicking butt. I really like it. So that's those. So I guess we'll check some questions here, see what you guys have to say. I hope you guys are giving us some projects so I can pick some favorites. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Username is Eastwood Co. Same on Instagram and Facebook. Follow us on both of those. We're going to be doing more live broadcasts pretty much weekly from here in our studio and also at separate locations. So if there's anything you guys want to see or learn or see any of our products in action, make sure you comment and let us know, and we'll do our best to do a live broadcast on it. So let me check this piece again. So somebody's mentioned about the MIG wire. Let's see here. So again, somebody said something about the spray can. In another video I did, they mentioned that unlike TIG welding, or I'm sorry, unlike MIG welding TIG welding does not create sparks. It doesn't throw sparks all over the table. I wouldn't want to put my aerosol bottle right next to what I'm welding that's getting really hot, but by placing it a few feet away, there's really no chance of anything happening because there's no sparks. If you're making sparks when you're TIG welding, you're doing something wrong. You're not cleaning the metal. Something's really wrong. There shouldn't be sparks, and you should stop. You should stop right away and try and figure it out. So the aerosol can isn't really too much of an issue as long as you keep it away from an area that's hot. If you can't touch the metal that's around what you're welding, you shouldn't have your aerosol can there. If it's out in here where it's cold, no problem at all. Let me just refresh here, see if we have any other ones. So somebody asked, let's read this again. Somebody asked about the MiG 175. We could certainly do a video on the performance of the MiG 175. That's again one of our workhorse machines. Probably my favorite machine for doing everything from fabrication to just light gauge work. And let's see here. Somebody asked about welding aluminum with this machine. The aluminum welding with this machine. This machine can do aluminum. You could switch it over to the AC side, just like this. You set your clearance effect or your AC balance control on the side here, and you're basically ready to go. You can set your pre and post flow. I could do an aluminum weld. I know this is on the fly, but maybe we can do one for you guys real quick since I have a piece. I thought somebody would have asked already, but you haven't. But I'm going to do it anyways. So I know, Joe, I'm sorry about this, but let's weld some aluminum. I'm feeling fancy. So we're going to have him walk around again real quick, and we'll do a little shot of welding some aluminum so you guys can see what it looks like to weld aluminum with the same machine. We're just going to change our controls a little bit. Turn my pedal down just a hair here. So I already cleaned my aluminum all up. I'm going to hit it with the Scotch-Brite again real quick. This is live, so I can do whatever the heck I want while we're live. But I think this will be the last thing we'll weld here. And then we'll check the comments again and pick our favorite project that you guys are going to post on there. So post a comment or post a photo of what you're welding, what you're working on in your shop right now. I want to see what you're working on. So I got a piece of aluminum here. I've already set up and tack welded just like the other pieces. One thing I mentioned, I had a separate Scotch-Brite pad for doing my aluminum. Same idea as the wire brush. So I tack welded this, cleaned it pretty good. Aluminum's even more picky. It likes to have a clean surface. Put my gloves on here. I'll move the other pedal out of the way. I'm going to keep using this rocker pedal. I really like that. Glove here. Another thing I like to do is I like to cut, unless you're doing long runs where you need to use a full section of filler wire, I like to cut my wire in half because number one, I'm doing this because I don't want to poke the camera guy in the face with my filler rod. Number two, it's extra weight that's hanging off of you or it's going to catch on something. I don't like doing that. The only time I'll leave my filler rod uncut is if I'm doing a real long run where I think I'm going to be using that whole entire piece. So you're going to notice it sounds quite a bit different when you're welding on the AC side. Sounds a little bit like a bug zapper. All right. And just let me know when you're all right. All right. Oop. So the process for getting a weld started with aluminum is a little different. You need to sit in the same spot for a little bit because you want that AC. You want that cleaning effect that happens on the AC. That's what that white halo is. And I let that clean, and I slowly start pushing the pedal down. Once I start seeing a puddle form, add a little bit of filler rod. And I dab the pedal. When I want filler rod, I just hit the pedal down. You can see out ahead of it, it's doing that cleaning action. And then when I want that filler in, I stomp on the pedal and let off. Move the puddle along, stomp on the pedal. Now I can't see too good here because we got the camera in the way at the end there, but I'm going to try and weld a little blind here until we get towards the end. And I'm running out of filler rod. So we'll let off. So at the end, you want to slowly back off the pedal. And what I like to do is instead of terminating in the center of the arc, or the puddle, I like to move it down off of it and let off. Real slow like that. Hold your torch there, let the gas flow away, and let off. So you can see that it's a lot different when you're welding aluminum, or it sounds a lot different, but there's that extra process that you have to do where you have to actually let it clean the metal and clean the area while you're welding, or before you start actually adding filler rod. You don't want to just start making a run. So that's a little bit of aluminum. You guys can see the process of that. Around the outside there's a little white halo you can see afterwards. I ran out of filler rod. I cut it a little short, so I didn't want to burn my hands like crazy, so I stopped there. But that's the piece that we welded with the aluminum. Let's check our questions, and don't forget to... All right, some people are saying they weren't able to see the project pictures. So if you can't post them in the feed here in the chat, either you can comment with what your project is, or post them on our wall. just go right on our wall after the broadcast and post your favorite project right on the wall, or what you're working on. And I'm going to pick 2 of my favorites after the broadcast of what the projects are. If you're having any problems, like I said, post them on the wall. I'm going to check the chat and the wall, and I'm going to pick a couple of my favorites. We'll announce them on our Facebook wall. By the end of the day today or early tomorrow, we'll announce our 2 favorites, and we're going to give you a free gas lens kit for your TIG welder. So thanks everybody for watching. I appreciate all the questions, appreciate everybody tuning in. Again, if you have any type of video you'd like to see in the future that's a live Facebook video of seeing a product in action, post up on our Facebook wall, send us an email, comment on our YouTube channel at Eastwood Co. We're on Instagram at Eastwood Co. as well. We'll make sure we'll do our best to get you guys a video, and we're going to keep doing them once a week. This is pretty fun. So thanks for watching. Catch you guys later.